The WWE WarGames lineup is starting to take shape. We pretty much know who it's going to be on the women's side based on how things unfolded on this week's Raw, and seems like the teams are pretty much set there. However, still some things to be determined on the men's side, of course, based on other events that happen on this week's Raw, which did feature John Cena's final stop in Boston on his retirement tour. Cena winning the Intercontinental Championship from Dominic Mysterio to add a little bit more intrigue as to what's going to happen with the 17-time world champion on the road to his last match at Saturday night's main event on December the 13th. But we also got the confirmation of WarGames, thanks to William Regal himself popping up and saying, well, WarGames. And so it's going to be CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, and Jey Uso on one side. It's going to be The Vision and Logan Paul on the other side, Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed, and Paul. But we got to figure out who's going to round out these two teams, and that is where the suspense comes in. And it at least seems like on paper that WWE is going to lean into this idea of the all-star teams. We are not just putting a bunch of random people into these matches. We are going to go with the top stars in this men's WarGames match to make it an absolute must-see attraction and must-see from the standpoint of all the different history between some of these participants, both with each other and with members of the opposing team. Now, again, we know we got CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, and Jey Uso on one side. But I think where the mystery here is, are we going to get what a lot of people expect to be Roman Reigns and John Cena potentially joining this all-star team of CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, Jey Uso, John Cena, and Roman Reigns? Now, if that is the case, again, this is what Triple H and WWE loves in this era, is to look at this and feel like you have all the little history you can tell in this one match, right? Everyone's trapped inside the cage. There's no out. Everyone has to find a way to coexist in this match, just as the theme was last year with Roman Reigns and CM Punk trying to coexist on that side against Solo and his crew, right? Well, this year, it will be taken to another level, and a level of which maybe we've not ever seen before in a WWE-type WarGames match. This could be an all-timer, just again, based on the idea that if it is those five, and all of those guys are having to figure out a way to team up together when everyone has kind of a hidden motivation behind what they're actually seeking, that it sets up so many fascinating directions for what you could do moving forward. And on the other side, if you have Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed, Logan Paul, and people are also speculating who are going to be the people that could join those three guys, I think it's pretty clear. I think Brock Lesnar is probably going to be one of those people. It just seems like Brock has sort of disappeared since the win over John Cena at WrestlePalooza, which we said, what did that win really mean? Well, if you put Cena in WarGames and you have Lesnar in WarGames, you can at least revisit that a little bit, even though Brock just kicked his ass at WrestlePalooza, and that was that. And you could also tie in the story with Cody here when it comes to Drew McIntyre. I know there are conflicting reports out there, it seems, as to Drew McIntyre maybe taking time off for a little while due to the suspension that he received from Nick Aldis on SmackDown. But there are other people saying, well, no, Drew's not filming this movie until next year, and so this suspension just could simply be part of the story, right? And if that's the case, well, Drew would be an obvious addition to this match to give it that all-star type feel, because if you have Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed, Logan Paul, Drew McIntyre, which remember, those last two teamed up at SummerSlam, so there's a connection you already have there between McIntyre and Paul, and then you've got Lesnar, you are putting together, again, bravo to WWE if this is how it unfolds, even if maybe a little bit feels a little bit thrown together. You have an all-star team on that side too, and all the different interactions you could have between Braun Breaker and Brock Lesnar. That's something that people, have been wanting to see, and all the different ways you could go about this, right? So this is setting up to be a WarGames match that could change WWE forever, because you have so many guys in here that have a backstory with each other, and all of this at Survivor Series is going to lead to our road to the Royal Rumble and to WrestleMania 42. And so I think this is where, we've talked about all the different dynamics they've been teasing. A Jey Uso heel turn, Cody Rhodes heel turn, right? Like all those kind of things. I've made it very clear what I think about the Cody one. I just don't see it right now. But I guess stranger things have happened. The Jey one could be fascinating because Jey kind of feels like the odd man out. If you really look at this all-star team and the way that it's assembled, look at Roman Reigns, CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, and John Cena. If it is that way, all right, we're just going to throw it out there that this may be the route they're going. Or they could just do John Cena versus Dominic again and have the rematch in San Diego, which would make sense for Dominic to get the title back from Cena in San Diego. So even if they don't go that route, right, you still have something where if it's a 4-on-4, you're going to still add Roman to this team. I don't think there's any question about it. LA Knight's not going to get the nod over Roman in this spot. It should be Roman Reigns based on, again, the story that they're going to have here. And maybe on the other side, maybe it's not Drew McIntyre. Maybe the suspension does keep him off TV for a little while, and you just add Lesnar, which Heyman adding Lesnar, I mean, there's no reason to act like that wouldn't make sense. Of course it would. So any way you slice it, Jey being the person kind of in the role of maybe he is the guy who eventually they're like, you know what, we're going to go a completely different direction with Jey here. And could that mean he costs, someone the match here, whether it's Roman, whether it's Punk, whether it's Cody? Like, there are so many ways that you could do this to where all of a sudden my excitement for this WarGames match is going up. And just the all-star type theme, if this is the route they're going with, and not to say they haven't kind of stacked the WarGames lineup, before, but this one feels different, right? This does feel like one that has a sort of groundbreaking type impact on WWE moving forward, heading into, next year, and maybe even for some of these competitors for the rest of their careers, right? This may be the kind of match that changes them because that's WarGames. Changes people when you go into WarGames and you come out, right? So that may be the story that WWE wants to tell with all of these participants. And so I do think that they have done, at least now, something that sets up the idea that this is going to be an unforgettable match that will have a lot of consequences for a lot of these participants in what their direction is going to be moving forward. And like I said, it probably sets up your early look at the Royal Rumble, but maybe more so sets up an early look at what matches they may have in mind for WrestleMania 42. We mentioned the Seth Rollins injury. That could have thrown some things for a loop, I have no doubt. But if you really look at this, and yes, we've still got to figure out who's going to face John Cena on December 13th and who's going to win the tournament and all that stuff, all these top participants being in these matches, like these are your core guys who are going to make up your main event of WrestleMania 42 on both nights probably. And so what combination will you get there? And what do you have to kind of work with in those matches? Like the stories they can tell in these WarGames, which, let's call it what it is as well. WarGames gives you a little more time. And it gives you the time to kind of get your, sink your teeth into those stories a little bit more because you have the different minutes between the participants and all that coming in. So you can tell these stories in a better way versus just trying to do it all separately. And that was the thing, right? We wondered, okay, do you just do your normal men's WarGames match, your women's WarGames match? You have Cody in his separate match, have Cena in his separate match, and then you're really just stacking the card from top to bottom. But I don't know that that's as necessary, given how long these WarGames matches are, to have it be that way, to where you kind of feel like one is lesser than the other. Why not just put them all together and see what happens? And I think that's your story here. Put all these combustible elements inside of a steel cage where they can't get out and see what happens. If that's the case, if that's the direction we're headed in, I'm all for it. And like I mentioned, they could even, go with the idea that maybe you don't put Cena in this. And maybe you do the Cena versus Dom rematch or something like that. I'd probably be okay with that too, because any way you slice it, you're going to add Roman Reigns into the mix here. I'd be shocked if that doesn't happen. And having Roman team with Cody, one of his biggest rivals ever, having Roman team with CM Punk, one of his biggest rivals ever, and having Roman team with Jey Uso, given the story they've been telling, that's fascinating stuff. Especially if on the other side, you're adding in a Brock Lesnar and or Drew McIntyre to the mix. There's plenty to work with there too, given the history between all these competitors. And I know people are, wondering, what about a Jimmy Uso? What about a LA Knight? I tend to look at this now and feel like WWE has pivoted away from those guys being involved, because otherwise, where are they, right? I mean, Jimmy's not been a factor whatsoever, really, at all here in recent weeks. LA Knight, everybody's making a lot of, I know the promo that was cut mid-promo last night on Raw. So it just seems like he's the odd man out, which would not be anything new for LA Knight, unfortunately. And yeah, if this is the direction they're headed in, you've got to think that WWE, looking at the visual of being able to promote a team that includes CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, Jey Uso, and Roman Reigns, and again, maybe John Cena. It doesn't get much better than that. So that seems to be where we're headed, and I want to know what you guys think about that idea. And if it happens, all the different stories you could tell, and again, all the different people that could be changed coming out of this match forever, potentially, and the different stories and the history and all the things they can do that WWE does well when they, really put the effort into it, that they can do these kind of things well in terms of all the callbacks and the history and all that between these competitors. And so I am much more intrigued by War Games than I was a couple weeks ago now. And I think this is the reason why, is knowing that you still have big moments you're setting up for. Roman Reigns has to come back. Raw at Madison Square Garden next week. There's going to be huge developments on that show, just as there was for this show in Boston. And I think you're going to see the full picture come together next week because you want to have, at least a couple weeks to feel like everything's in place. And so I think you will have a very clear idea of who these two teams are going to be next week on Raw, and will that include these different people as we talked about? Roman Reigns, John Cena, Brock Lesnar, Drew McIntyre, like all these kind of guys. Are they the ones who are going to fill out these teams on both sides, or do we get maybe some wild card options? Remember, initially the plan report out there was that Austin Theory was going to be involved, but that was before the Rollins injury and all that. Did that throw that off? Again, there were initial reports that Jey Uso or LA Knight were going to be involved. Still a lot to be determined, but I think we'll find out at Madison Square Garden next week. You guys let me know what you think about these potential all-star War Games teams on the men's side, and how do you think, each lineup is going to officially turn out? Who's going to be on this team? Who's going to be on that team? Let me know your predictions for how it's going to play out, and what could you see happening at Survivor Series in this War Games match on the men's side. Lots of fun stuff, I think, for WWE to work with, and again, could change a lot in terms of these characters moving forward. So appreciate you guys watching. As always, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button as well, and let me know your predictions for the men's War Games teams and how things could unfold at Survivor Series in San Diego.